What's up, folks? Ruckus Reacts, back for another video. It's been a few days, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 days since I uploaded the last video. And if you saw the last video, then you'll know last week was a stressful one. Also, I don't know, maybe some of you guys might have seen my post as to why I wasn't gonna be uploading the other day. I mean, it's now Tuesday, but Friday we had to do exactly what I said in the last video, but we had to put the pup down. So it's, I'm sure you guys, for those of you that are new, you don't know, some of y'all probably know, have seen. She was always in my videos with me. She was always, right next to me on the couch. Her blankets, still got her blankets right here. But every time I made a video, she was right there with me. And, again, just to touch up for whoever didn't see. Her name was Micah. She was 12, gonna be 13 this year. And a little over a month ago, she started to just kind of really go downhill, just out of nowhere. Which is weird because she still acted like her puppy self a lot, had a lot of energy, and she was fine. And then she started to have noticeable issues with her back right leg, and started doing what's called knuckling, where she doesn't put her paw down, she kind of has it this way, and she started dragging it. And we thought maybe she was having some hip issues, or possibly could have been this certain condition that affects dogs and pit bulls. It turns out the vet said they thought that she had a cancerous tumor that was pressing on things in her lower spine, because not long after it started happening with her back right leg, the same thing started happening with the left leg. And before too long, she was paralyzed. She couldn't walk. She had no feeling, nothing. We had, if you noticed in the last couple videos, there was this black harness thing, like kind of around her back and around her waist, and that's what we used to have to kind of hold up on so that she could still walk with her front legs. But she just went downhill and spiraled so quick. I mean, once it got to the point where she couldn't use either of her back legs, she stopped eating. She wasn't happy. She soon after started to lose control of her bladder and her bowels, and would just piss and shit. So it was time to say goodbye. It sucks. It's a hard call to make, having to do that. I'm sure a lot of you guys are dog owners and you understand because you've been there. Maybe you haven't been there yet. I don't wish it on anybody. It sucks, especially after so many years of having them around. I mean, dogs are like your kids, your pets are your children, but especially dogs. And it's tough having to, we had a black lab that we put down about 2 years ago, and we let him go too long, and he suffered for a while because we didn't want to let him go, and we swore we weren't gonna do that with Micah. So just had to make that hard call and not be selfish and think about quality of life and what's best for her. And it was hard, man. It was tough. It was really tough. Yeah, I tried to not think about it until the day came, but once the day came and once it was time to do it, and the vet was here, because we had the vet come and do it here, so she was comfortable. She was home, surrounded by family, but it was hard. It was really hard. And I miss her. I really miss her. We're just down to the cat now. It just feels like losing part of the family, just one piece after another. We had started with 4 pets. Now we're down to 1. It's just the house is lonely. It's that way, especially when the wife's working. But I only have my daughter, a couple days out of the week, every other week. Stepson's, he works and he's with his girlfriend a lot. So house just feels empty. I don't know. It's just hard to explain. But I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit here and keep going into it. I don't want to make this video long. It's already kind of somewhat a long video. I just wanted to touch base on that because, you know, that's what's happened since last video. So sorry for dragging this out, and I don't talk to a lot of people, so I guess this is kind of a way to get shit off my chest. So yeah, things have been hard. But anyways, so what we're here for today is a request that somebody had just recently made, actually, a few days ago. As you can probably see and assume what we're doing, we are doing Making the Case, 1986 Celtics by Clayton Crowley. Now, maybe some of you guys have seen this, maybe you haven't, but this is the same channel that also put up the video that we reacted to a few weeks back, Making the Case Larry Bird. Now, they've got a number of Making the Case videos on their channel, and probably a good handful we'll probably end up reacting to, but somebody brought this up, so I figured, hey, let's do this. You know, it's a nice 23-minute long video, and I'm anxious to see what it's about. So we've already done enough yapping. Without further ado, let's just hop right in, see what we got.
What's the goal of basketball? To win, right? But not just to win individual games. The ultimate goal is to win a championship. Of course, basketball is a team sport. Championships are won by the most complete, most inspired team. Every champion deserves credit, but the question on my mind is, who's the greatest team of all time? With apologies to Bill and Wilt, I have a list of 8 teams since 1970 that I want to look at as having a claim to that distinction. It is a loaded question, and one that
Oh, Kareem had those mutton chops, man. I think that was Kareem. Was that Kareem? Either way, Kareem's fucking mutton chops that he had, they're famous, man. Yeah, I think it is Kareem. Look at those. Look at those. I mean, it looks like he's got the chin strap, but all you can see is the fucking mutton chops.
It is a loaded question, and one that I ultimately can't answer. Is it the teams that were front runners from beginning to end? The ones who were unbeatable at their peak? Maybe the ones who tapped into something special and overcame countless obstacles? There is no right answer. It's your job to make your own call.
Ooh, Kobe.
And it's my job to make the case. So today, I'll be making the case for the 1986 Boston Celtics as the greatest basketball team of all time.
Real quick, I guess one could argue that greatest team of all time is the Celtics, but there's really not that much of an argument if you think about it. I mean, look at how they were back in the day, and they're still killing shit now. I mean, the Celtics these days are not the Celtics from back in the day by any means, but it doesn't mean that they're not skilled players, and they're always at the top of the league. Not even just the division. They're at the top of the league every year, year after year after year. And I think that's probably the way it'll be. I can't picture there ever coming a time that the Celtics will be at the bottom of the league or not even making, playoff spots whatsoever. Really no argument, but I'm anxious to see how the case is made.
Some quick background. In the 1985 NBA Finals, the Los Angeles Lakers defeated the Celtics behind the heroic efforts of Magic Johnson and Finals MVP Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was the first time in history that the Lakers had defeated the Celtics in the finals, going back as far as 1959. In the ensuing offseason, the Celtics made key roster moves, licked their wounds, then rattled off a league-high 67 wins on their way to raising the franchise's 16th championship banner. Their 67-15 record stands as the best record in Celtics history, and their 15-3 playoff record serves as a testament to their aptitude on both ends of the court. They trotted out the original Big Three of Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, and the immortal Larry Bird, a dynamic backcourt of Dennis Johnson and Danny Ainge, and boasted a talented bench anchored by former league MVP Bill Walton. Now, before we go any further, I want to reach out to some of you out there. Some of you might be a little jaded.
Of course, Bird's gonna be at the top of that list. Can't put anybody above Bird. Not off the Celtics.
Now, before we go any further, I want to reach out to some of you out there. Some of you might be a little jaded about this team, and that's because some of the most prominent and influential figures in sports media were around for and swear by this team. Your Bill Simmons, your Jackie McMullins, your Bob Bryans, they all have a connection to this squad in some way or another, so the discourse around the '86 Celtics has always had a certain amount of Boston-centric bias. I want you to know that I have no such bias. I was born and raised in Kansas. I don't give a shit about
computers,
Boston.
man.
Dunkin' Donuts can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. And I'm here to tell you that just because those writers were a little bit biased doesn't mean that they're wrong. With that said, where else do we start with the '86 Celtics than with Larry Bird? 1986 saw Bird take home his third straight MVP, joining the historic company of just Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell. Never before had a forward submitted a better season than Bird's 7th campaign. He slapped up a 26, 10-7 and was decimal points away from submitting a 50, 40, 90 season. The man had a superlative basketball IQ and remains, for my money, the clutchest player to ever put leather through nylon. He had a blend of all-around skills that began garnering him GOAT talk from people like Bob Cousy and Jerry West. His tenacity on the boards defied his 6'9" frame. His creativity was tantamount to Tesla, and his infectious passing gave the team an identity that remains as impressive and timeless now, some 35 years later, as it was back then.
Yo, real quick, I've been a Larry Bird fan for a long time. I never knew Larry Bird was 6'9". I mean, I knew he was tall, but I didn't know he was that tall. I didn't know he was 3 inches away from being 7 fucking feet tall. That's crazy. Like, I figured maybe 6'4". That's wild. I really didn't know that.
35 years later, as it was back then. He finished the season ranked 7th in rebounds, 4th in points, 13th in assists, 8th in steals, and 2nd in minutes played. So elevated was his level of play that he admitted to getting bored in games and looking for ways to entertain himself, like taking increasingly ridiculous shots or playing portions.
That's why he needed the records for things in certain buildings. All right, sorry guys, wife called.
In games and looking for ways to entertain himself, like taking increasingly ridiculous shots or playing portions of games left-handed.
That's what I started to say. Yeah, that's why Larry Bird needed to know, like, he'd send people to check and see what the record is, or the record was, for the building that they were playing in. Like, what's the scoring record in this building? He'd get challenges for himself so that he didn't get bored, and he always had something that he was shooting for. You know, he had to go for breaking records, doing something. That's what kept him in tip-top shape. Kept him 100.
At the other forward spot was Kevin McHale. After back-to-back 6th Man of the Year awards as a super sub, '86 was McHale's first season as a starter, and he immediately began producing at an all-NBA level. With his 6'10" height and unsettlingly long limbs, McHale earned a reputation as one of the great two-way players in the league. Defensively, he was mobile and springy enough to move with quicker swingmen, while being long and strong enough to contest interior scorers. Offensively, there's a reason that Olajuwon and McHale are the two names that get mentioned whenever someone talks about post players. Opponents trapped in McHale's torture chamber were subjected to an array of moves that left them confounded, wondering where on earth the man went and how the hell he'd gotten there. You never knew what he was going to throw at you. He'd combine fakes into an up and under, pivot into an uncontestable fallaway, or whatever else struck his fancy. It's still striking to see him twist and wind through defenders with his moves the same way Kyrie Irving splits defenders with his handle. Averaging 21 points and 8 rebounds a game on an otherworldly 57% field goal percentage, McHale was a luxury for Boston. He would take on the toughest defensive assignment, allowing Bird to roam, and scored with enough efficiency and volume that his counterpart never had to carry the full offensive burden.
You know, of all the content that I've combed through or watched with the Bird videos, you know, like you see other Celtics, other players getting mentioned and getting some shine, and you hear the names of some of these other players like McHale, but obviously the videos that are focused on Bird, you don't really get to find out much about these players. So I'm actually glad somebody recommended this because, you know, the Celtics back in the day were legendary for a reason. And as much as a lot of Bird fans like to think it's because of Bird, clearly they had a whole squad of killers. You know, it wasn't just Larry Bird. So I'm actually excited about this to see what other players were actually dope and actually, you know, were up there with Bird, like Kevin McHale.
Scored with enough efficiency and volume that his counterpart never had to carry the full offensive burden. Rounding out the big three was the man in the middle, the Chief, Robert Parrish. As the unsung hero of the team, Parrish doesn't get talked about nearly as much as Bird and McHale, but make no mistake, the Chief was dangerous. Keeping in mind that these stats don't include Bill Russell because of a lack of recorded statistics, Parrish is still the Celtics' all-time leader in offensive rebounds, defensive rebounds, blocks, and is still the NBA's leader in games played. You could rely on Chief for 16 and 10 with Duncan-esque consistency. The man was always in shape and feasted on opposing defenses simply by outrunning them. God only knows how many points he scored because he hustled his way down the court, setting up easy outlet passes.
Okay, Bird.
He shot well from the field, was a good free throw shooter, had a reliable jumper, defended, rebounded, set Steven Adams-like picks, and did all the little things. There wasn't a ton of room for heroics on such a loaded roster, so you couldn't count on Parrish jumping out at you with a 39-point game, but he embraced being the third option the same way Scottie Pippen embraced being the second. Never forget that Robert Parrish held his own in the age of giants against Ralph Sampson, Olajuwon, Kareem, Moses, Ewing, and the rest of them. At point guard was Dennis Johnson, one of the most underrated players ever. That's a video for another time, though. For the Celtics, DJ fulfilled his role as the best defensive guard of his era. With 9 straight all-defensive selections from 79 to 87, only Kobe made more all-defensive teams as a guard. He was the best matchup on Magic of any player in the league, set the table for everyone on his team, and consistently came through in money time.
Money.
He and Bird had what some refer to as a telepathic connection, making tight wire action between them routine.
Yeah.
He was the ringleader of the squad, and Bird still calls him the best player he ever played with.
It's funny to mention that because there's a lot of like dynamic duos that you got these days in sports, and you know, like with the Celtics, it's Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I like the duo that's got the telepathy or whatever you want to call it, and all the like the Bucks got Dame. They got Dame Lillard and Giannis. Like with the Chiefs, going to football, it was Kelsey and Mahomes. And yeah, it seems like every team has those two players that play well together. The Knicks, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. It's like, I don't know, there's always a duo. Always a duo in there.
At the other guard was Danny Ainge, a reliable double-digit scorer and wily little rascal that thrived on riling up the opposition and getting under their skin. Ainge was also one of the great shooters of the era and went on to demolish the single-season three-point record in 1988. A talented multi-sport athlete, Ainge remains the only high schooler to be named a first-team All-American in football, baseball, and basketball. And coming off the bench was the Celtics' secret weapon, Bill Walton. Drafted first overall by the Portland Trailblazers in 1974,
never heard of him.
Walton had a transcendent stretch of basketball in the late 70s, guiding the Blazers to the NBA championship in 77 and winning league MVP in 78. Injuries derailed his career at the end of his 78 season, though, and he played in just 14 games over the next 4 seasons. By 86, Walton was a liability and a shell of the player he once was. Looking for redemption and one more chance to be a part of something special, he called Red Auerbach to see if the Celtics would be interested in trading for him. The deal went through, though health still remained the biggest question on everyone's mind. Could his body withstand the grueling championship campaign these Celtics were setting out on? Well, in the 100 games that the Celtics played that season, Walton played in 96 of them. He won the 6th Man of the Year award thanks to his size.
I'm noticing that, I guess I've never really paid much attention before, but I'm noticing that a lot of these old school Celtics players are white. You see, like, prime example, the other team, it's like all black. Not that the Celtics didn't have black players, but they had a lot of white boys who could play ball back when it was supposed to be a black man's sport.
He won the 6th Man of the Year award thanks to his size, smarts, rebounding ability, and defensive instincts. He was still every bit of the best passing big man ever, and found a kindred spirit in Bird, who also reveled in elevating the talent level of his teammates and in the fine details of basketball. To boot, Walton added an Andy Bernard dynamic to the team. He had had his good old days and seen them drain through his fingers. Yet here he was, once again, with a chance to be a part of something historic, completely aware and appreciative of the fact that this was and would always be the good old days of Celtics basketball. In all, the roster touted 5 Hall of Famers. 5. A whole lineup. And
That's
every starter on the
impressive.
team was a double-digit scorer. They gelled together
That
to
is
form
impressive.
a hive mind presence, assimilating into nothing short of Bird's brainchild. If Bird were cutting, DJ would put the ball where it was supposed to be the second it was supposed to be there. If McHale was rolling on some poor soul in the post and got doubled, Ainge would be in the perfect place for a kick-out. If Parrish got open down the court, you could bet that the ball would find him.
With
Emulating
the
Bird's
quickness,
all-around
man.
prowess, the Celtics could beat you in any which way. Whatever you did, they did better. If you had a speedy, heady guard, you had the pleasure of being locked down by Dennis Johnson. If your calling card was your big men, you had to contend with the greatest front court of all time. Not razor sharp defensively, the hive mind will beat you into a pulp with their passing.
Yo.
Your offense isn't clicking on every conceivable cylinder.
Look at
You would be
these
swarmed,
motherfuckers,
you would
man.
turn the ball over, and every shot you took would be smothered. And if you let the game stay close down the stretch, Larry Bird would put the nails in your coffin. They had answers
All right,
for everything.
okay.
They could change their style of play on a whim and excel at it. Bird, Ainge, and backup point guard Jerry Seasting were all dead-eye shooters. The big men were some of the best post players to ever play.
Oh my
They could put out
God.
an absolutely massive lineup with Bird at the 2, McHale at the 3, and Parrish and Walton in the middle. They could go small with no loss of quality with McHale at center and Bird at the 4. Craziest of all, they really wouldn't even need to size up or size down. The 86 Celtics are still one of the only teams in history to be able to play a small ball style with a gargantuan starting lineup.
Yo,
Everyone
oh my
was mobile
God,
enough to push
bro.
the pace and stay active. Their inside-outside proficiency could
No, I gotta see that again. Like, I'm trying to pay attention to all this. All this shit is dope, man. 86 Celtics were rocking it. Like, this video is dope.
a small ball style with a gargantuan starting lineup. Everyone was mobile enough to push the pace and stay active. Their inside-outside proficiency could space the floor.
Like, just look
They
at
could
the back
defend
and
and
forth
corral
passing.
nearly all types of scorers, and their passing would carve defenses to shreds, all without giving up an inch. And if we're checking boxes, the Boston Garden in the 1980s was the best home court in sports. Already some 50 years old, the dingy dungeon halls of the Garden had been host to some of the greatest players and moments in sports history, offering comfort to its allies and peril to its enemies. The crowd was insatiable and earned a reputation for both their devotion and potential for viciousness. The rafters were littered with championship banners and retired numbers in such quantity that they
Still
became
is.
superfluous. The Celtics took advantage of this and ran with it, notching a 50-1 home record, including the playoffs.
It's actually funny that they bring that up because last time I was at TD Gardens, was for a concert, and I took pictures of all the banners and all, like, there's a lot of pictures and stuff on the walls, a lot of really cool stuff for like the Celtics and shit. And obviously they got stuff for the Bruins in there too, but yeah, TD Gardens is littered with Celtics, fast, playoff shit, whatnot.
Were they perfect? No, they weren't that athletic, and they had a tendency every now and then to get bored and take their foot off the gas against bad teams. Could they have gotten to 70 or even 72 wins? Sure. And you can hold that against them, but tell me, when we're talking about something as grand as the greatest team of all time, how much do those 3 to 5 regular season games really matter? As we established in the beginning of the video, the Celtics lost the '85 finals to the Lakers for the first time in franchise history. The loss stung deep, and members of the team still believe that they let the series get away from them. With a newfound inspiration and the drive to reclaim what they believed was theirs, they tore through the league with one team in mind. The rivalry between the Celtics and the Lakers should need no background. Since the days of Jerry West and Elgin Baylor competing against Bill Russell and Bob Cousy, the two franchises have defined the NBA within and without. Today, the two franchises account for nearly half of all championships in NBA history. And the rivalry was never more intense than in the 80s, as Magic Johnson and Larry Bird presented their teams and their sport to the world. Since their iconic college basketball championship showdown, the two had assumed the role as battling titans, trading blows with one another, daring to push the boundaries of basketball to fit their own needs and desires. No pass was too extraordinary, no shot too outrageous. And after the Lakers had landed such a damaging blow in the finals,
that never gets old.
Bird and the Celtics were eager to return the favor. In the two regular season matchups between the two squads, the Celtics came away with victories both times against the defending champs. And while they no doubt enjoyed the bragging rights that this afforded them, their true crusade began in the playoffs. In round one, they found themselves matched up with the 40-win Chicago Bulls and an extraordinary young guard named Michael Jordan. Having missed most of the season with an injured foot, Jordan was eager to assert himself and unleash his latent talents. He did just that. After a 49-point performance in Game 1, Jordan put on a spectacle in Game 2 by setting the NBA record for most points in a single playoff game with 63. Bird famously described the effort as God disguised as Michael Jordan. It was a glimpse into the future of the NBA and a coming out party for the league's next great star.
I remember that.
Ultimately for the series, though, it didn't even matter. The Celtics won both games. Not even such an extraordinary performance as Jordan's was enough to dent the armor of the Celtics, who then won Game 3 to sweep the series. And after killing God, I can't say that. In the next round, Boston was faced with MVP runner-up and the league's leading scorer, Dominique Wilkins, and his Atlanta Hawks. Though the Celtics had won all 4 of the regular season matchups.
That's the one that I got wrong in the last video when we did the, what was it? Bird's 60-point game against the Hawks. I want to say that was 86 as well. Maybe I could be wrong, but I did get the name wrong of Dominique Wilkins. I didn't know who he was at first. By the end of the video, I knew who he was, and I got it wrong in the video. I was calling him Mr. Williams, Dominic Williams. I don't know why I got it messed up like that, but I put the little thing in there to show that I obviously meant Wilkins. But that dude was a beast. We might have to do a video on him too.
Boston was faced with MVP runner-up and the league's leading scorer, Dominique Wilkins, and his Atlanta Hawks. Though the Celtics had won all 4 of the regular season matchups with the Hawks, each contest was decided in the single digits and most had come down to the final moments. Dominique represented Bird's toughest matchup in the East, with his boundless athleticism and potential for incredible outbursts. The Celtics succeeded in containing him for the most part, though, putting up walls to the lane and closing out on his jump shots. Though they were competitive through the first 3 games, the Hawks were at the mercy of the Celtics and found themselves down 3-0. With Game 4 in Atlanta and a series victory for Boston all but certain, Wilkins and backup point guard Spud Webb caught the Celtics with their foot off the gas, combining for 58 points and denying them a 4-game sweep.
That
Back
dude
in
got some
Beantown for
crazy
Game
dunk
5,
ability.
Bird and company took the opportunity to remind the Hawks, themselves, and the league that this was their year. In one of the great statement
looked like he
games in
was
playoff
sleeping.
history, Boston turned an 11-point halftime lead into a 33-point blowout, punctuated by an absurd third quarter in which the Celtics outscored the Hawks 36-6. Defense turned into offense.
Holy
Offense
shit.
turned into more offense. And by the end of the period, the crowd was bursting with supreme confidence in their team.
They just can't believe what has happened to them. The crowd is starting to chant "Beat LA." A little premature.
The Celtics were a team of destiny, and the Garden knew it. Boston then easily dispatched a 57-win Bucks team in the Eastern Conference Finals, though in fairness, Sidney Moncrief had sustained a hobbling foot injury earlier in the playoffs. He missed Game 1 and was ultimately held in check by the Celtics, who took the series in 4 games. Would a healthy Moncrief have made a difference? Unquestionably. Would the Celtics have swept the Bucks?
Fucking battery's dying. Sorry, folks. Had to plug the laptop in. The shit was about to die.
Celtics have swept the Bucks? I think it's unlikely, but would they still have won the series and advanced to their 3rd straight finals? Yes. In any case, the Celtics were now 4 wins away from capturing their championship and submitting their application to the all-time team discussion. All they needed was a worthy opponent. And they got one, though it wasn't the one they were expecting. That's because the defending champion Lakers had been upset in just 5 games by the upstart Houston Rockets
That
and their
slap.
mammoth combination of big men, 7'4" Ralph Sampson and 7-foot Akeem Olajuwon. And they intended to prove that their victory over the
Olajuwon was
Lakers
7
had been
feet?
no fluke. After 2 Celtic victories in Boston, the series moved to Houston for the next 3 games. Here, the Rockets put their foot down and showed a resilience not yet seen against these Celtics, earning the respect of the basketball-watching public. They won Game 3 by 2 points, helped in large part to Sampson's 24-point, 22-rebound performance. Still against the ropes, though, they faltered in Game 4, suffering a 3-point defeat. With a
That was
3-1
nasty.
series lead through the first 4 games, the Celtics were on the brink of their destiny.
God.
They'd been able to mitigate the Rockets' size advantage on the boards, though the 23-year-old Olajuwon had succeeded in making himself known as an intimidating and impressive young talent. With Boston looking to close out their season with a championship in Game 5, Olajuwon played an inspired game with 34 points, 14 rebounds, and 8 blocks. The Rockets won and ensured that no championship would be hoisted on Houston's home floor, but not before damning their championship chances.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a video on Olajuwon too, because he was a dope-ass player. I know I've mentioned that before.
Just into the second quarter of the game, Sampson had gotten a mismatch on 6'1" Jerry Seasting. After some pushing and jostling for position, Sampson turned around and delivered 2 quick, heavy blows to Seasting, igniting a bench-clearing altercation. Sampson was subsequently
throwing
ejected
punches.
from the game, though Olajuwon did carry the Rockets to a victory and forced a trip back to Boston. The Celtics were pissed. They were pissed that they'd let that game get away from them. They were pissed that they'd let Houston keep the series alive. And they were pissed that Sampson had squared off against a player over whom he had a 15-inch height advantage. At practice the day before Game 6, the players worked themselves into such a feverish lather, playing with so much physicality, that head coach Casey Jones had to call off practice. The Garden was no different. The fans were delirious,
What the
setting a
fuck
new
is
kind
that?
of record for malevolent trash talk, with most of their attention focused on the imposing Rockets center.
Was that a fucking... What the hell was that? Hanging a dummy or a blow-up doll? What the fuck is that?
Delirious, setting a new kind of record for malevolent
What the
trash
fuck?
talk, with most of their attention focused on the imposing Rockets center. The team and their fans wanted to win, to claim their rightful place at the height of the sport, and they wanted to make the Rockets regret the day they ever messed with the Boston Celtics. And the instrument for that righteous fury was none other than Larry Bird. For one game, Larry Bird played a different sport. In what has been described and immortalized in many different ways as the greatest game he ever played. At first glance, you notice his box score wasn't all that sensational. 29 points, 11 rebounds, 12 assists on 47% shooting. He didn't score 60, it wasn't a near quadruple-double, and he hit no buzzer beaters. But you only have to watch the game to see that he was, in classic Bird fashion, everywhere, doing everything, at all times. Disrupting passing lanes, finding his teammates, even winning a jump ball against Olajuwon. He was the king, and basketball was his kingdom.
Yep.
The Celtics walked out with a comfortable 17-point victory as world champions.
At that.
With Bird remarking himself that it was the best performance of his career, the only one that he ever felt totally prepared for. Afterwards, Red Auerbach blessed the team as one of, if not the, greatest he'd ever seen. To recap, you take one of the most talented starting fives ever, composed of the greatest front court of all time, with the greatest forward tandem to ever play basketball, and watch them eviscerate their opponents with stifling two-way play, dazzling passes, suffocating defense, exquisite shooting, and sublime post-play. They win more games than have ever been won by their illustrious club and proceed to rampage their way to a championship, culminating in the best game in the career of one of basketball's most brilliant talents. The Boston Garden stands no more. Demolished in 1998 after 70 years of service and replaced with a building with air conditioning. I'll never get to see it, never get to ask the walls my questions, nor gag down a Sam Adams surrounded by insufferable Boston sports fans. Among the distinguished teams that called the parquet floor home, one stands alone. And if those walls were still around, if that floor could talk, I know what I'd ask them. And I think I already know the answer they'd give. They'd tell me that the 1986 Boston Celtics were the greatest basketball team of all time.
Agreed. Alright guys, so that was Making the Case, 1986 Celtics by Clayton Crowley. Again, he was the one that made the video Making the Case, Larry Bird, that we did. That was actually a pretty, that was a pretty dope, interesting video. It's nice to get some new knowledge of, like other players. Obviously, everything to do with the Celtics back then kind of revolved around Larry Bird, and everybody wants to see the Larry Bird videos. But like I mentioned in the last video, it's nice to see the limelight on some of the other players, because there was a lot of dope players that played on the Celtics and a lot of the other teams that I'm still even learning about. The ones that are talked about less than, obviously, the average GOAT debate conversations. But yeah, I like the way this guy puts these videos together, and I have a number of them. I actually went on his channel and checked out the other day. Want to do Making the Case Magic Johnson, Making the Case Michael Jordan, Making the Case 1996 Bulls, Making the Case LeBron James, and there's other ones on there too. I really kind of want to do the Wilt Chamberlain one, but he was so far back in the day that footage is probably shit. It's probably hard to see. But yeah, whichever one of you guys requested this video, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but I appreciate it. Thank you. It was a dope watch. And if you guys have any other ones, any of these other Making the Case videos, or any other videos in general that you want to see me react to, like I always say, drop it in the comments and I will check it out. I'll put it on the list. We'll get to it. And yeah, thanks to all my supporters, everybody that's been with me from the jump, and all the new subscribers and fans. And if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you never miss another video. Like, share, all that good shit. I appreciate it. But I got some shit I gotta get to doing on top of editing this video. So it's been long enough. I had enough chit chat in the beginning. I will catch you guys on the next one. And yeah, Ruckus Reacts. Deuces.